There we go. All right, so welcome as you're joining our group. We are super excited about this virtual support group, all about for caregivers of those that are living with dementia-related illnesses. And I am just so excited about this conversation and actually this happening where we're all going to be able to meet and talk. So I want to give just a little bit about our program. This is the Dementia Caregiver Support Program. And it is all about exactly how it sounds, giving caregivers the support that they need through connections, resources, encouragement, groups like this, meetings like this, and connecting you with the experts that really live and breathe in this space. So we have an exciting hour or so, a couple hours ahead of us. And what we're going to do is start off by just letting you know who our panelists are today. So of course, as I mentioned, my name is Liletta Harlem. I am the Executive Director of the Dementia Caregiver Support Program, the administrator of the Facebook group, which many of you are coming from. So I am so happy to meet you. I'm seeing smiling faces. So I love that. Hello. I love that. So again, welcome. And then I'm going to just introduce our panelists here and thank them for just taking time out for this conversation today. So I'm going to start with our dementia expert who is here, which is Sydney. Sydney is a part of RAFT, which she will explain more about that in a little bit. But Sydney, if you want to just kind of give a little introduction.
Yeah, sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sydney Palinkas, and I'm a social worker with the RAFT Dementia Support Program.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you. And of course, you'll hear more as we go along. So then next, I'm going to go to, I'm like looking at my screen here. So again, as I mentioned, we have Sydney that really lives in that just dementia space. But because as caregivers, we're so prone to burnout and we're so prone to just stress and all of that, I wanted to make sure to have those who are experts in the field of taking care of ourselves, mind, body, really making sure that we're okay. So with that said, I want to go ahead and introduce, I'll start with Elethia, which is our health and wellness coach. So Elethia, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Greetings. I'm so happy to be here with you today and talking about such an important subject. My name is Elethia Gay. They refer to me sometimes as Coach E, and I'm a lifestyle medicine coach, and I work with many people with chronic diseases, but I also personal train. I'm a yoga instructor, and I like to help people get to the root of their wellness.
Awesome. Welcome so much. And then I will pass it on over to Mischelle. Mischelle, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mischelle O'Neal, and I'm a certified life coach and emotional wellness coach to help my caregivers, the amazing women out there and men who are taking care of their loved ones, to help them have emotional resilience so that they can best serve those that they love.
Awesome, awesome. And of course, last but certainly not least, as caregivers, oftentimes we have to face decisions such as relocating our loved ones. And that process can bring about a lot of challenges, right? So we have our experts here who are going to talk about certain parts of that process and bring to you their background and experience and programs to help with that. So with that said, I'll start with Jennifer. Jennifer, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. I'm Christoff. I am a real estate agent for the past 12 years. I am a home stager for the past 14 years. and an interior designer. My dad is living with dementia and lives in memory care facility. And so I helped him with the transition of moving from home to assisted living. And I now would like to be able to help other people going through that process to make it a lot smoother. So I'll talk more about how I can help do that as we go along. Thank you
Awesome.
so much for everyone being here.
Absolutely. And of course, again, last but not least, we have Kelli. Kelli, go ahead and talk about what you bring and what you're doing.
Absolutely. My name is Kelli Williams, and I am a branch sales manager with Geneva Financial and a lender affiliate with Homes for Heroes. And I am here to talk to you, our heroes, which you are, about a great program that rewards you. If again, if you're going to relocate or if you're going to purchase a home, refinance a home, I'm going to show you how I can save you a lot of money by doing that. And that's a reward to you guys.
Awesome. Awesome. So I am excited. What I'm going to do, and for those of you, as you're joining, as you think of questions that you have, feel free to drop it in the chat because we'll be making sure that our experts can answer those questions for you. But I want to circle back and kind of switch it up a little bit. And I'm going to start with the mental aspect of it because there's again, and I see it all the time in our Facebook group, that oftentimes one of the biggest things is talking about just the weight, right? The emotions, the guilt, the frustration, all of that comes as a caregiver. So I want to first start with our mental wellness folks and talk about the importance of tapping into that. And as you talk about that, feel free to even talk about just your own experience in what you do and all of that. So Mischelle, I'm going to start with you. For our caregivers, can you talk about the importance of mental wellness, emotional wellness, and why that's so important as a caregiver of someone living with dementia?
A lot of times, absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm just ready to jump in. You know me by now. So, but a lot of times what happens is when we find ourselves in that position, what we do is we want to just take care. We want to take responsibility. If you're from my background and you're a woman, you're used to jumping in there, nurturing, taking care of. And what we do is we allow our health to backslide. One of the things, if you think about it as a mother, one of the things we do is, and don't get on me, but we would have holy underwear or a bra that doesn't work well because it was more important that we took care of our kids or we took care of the family and we made sure they were, and we didn't care about us. But I remember I hear my mom in my background saying, girl, whatever you do, make sure there's no holes in your underwear in case you get in an accident. But anyways, so what I'm saying is we do the same thing in caregiving. We're so centered and focused on taking care of those that we love and making sure they're taken care of that we don't take care of ourselves. We don't take care of our health. We don't take care of our emotional state or our emotional wellness. And what happens along the way is we start wearing down, we start tearing down, and then we're not serving them to our best. We're frustrated, our patience is thin, and all these things are happening because we're not allowing ourselves to refuel and just regroup and come back. And so that's why this is so important. But we're also battling with old patterns and old stories and old expectations of how we should be. And I always say as women, but period, men are dealing with it, women are dealing with it, but the expectations of societal expectations of you're supposed to be this, you're a woman, you can handle this, you're supposed to take care of this, you're a man, you're supposed to be the man of the house, you should take care of this, you should be bringing in the money. And we allow those old patterns to continually play in our mind and in our lives, and they dictate the things that we do, our actions. And so we need to learn to reframe those and change those old lies and replace them with good things and good lies. And it's a process. And a lot of times we don't see that because we're in the midst. And that's where you need other people outside to kind of help you walk through this. That's why community is so important. That's why professional help is so important because you're in the midst of it. And you know, in anything, when you're in the midst of it, in the middle of a recipe, I hate to say this, but even in the middle of the recipe, it's so easy to forget to throw the salt in, which is one of the most important ingredients because you're in the midst of it. And so we have to allow that community to nurture us and build us up as well.
I love that. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Elethia. What do you want to add to that?
Well, it's interesting hearing Mischelle speak, and when she mentioned her mom and the advice her mom gave her. And I think that's so key when we talk about mental health and caregiving, because what I have seen, and I always try to speak from my personal experience. That's why I do what I do from my personal experience. And it was my mom who really taught me, who showed me through her actions, the importance of my own self-care and her being a caregiver. It was back in, goodness, without telling my age, I was in college and she was taking care of my great-grandmother. And I had grown up seeing my mother take care of people who battle cancer, take care of people who battle cancer, take care of people who battle cancer. And one day my sister called and she said, Lethy, go check on mommy. She's not right. I said, what? She has a cold. I think it's the flu. And I'm 19. I'm like, I got to go to class. And she's like, no, she said, go, something isn't right. Go and check on mommy. She's at great grandmother's house, taking care of her. I think you should really go and see about her. And I fought it for a little while, but something in my sister's voice told me, don't play with this one right here. And so I went to my great grandmother's house and my mother was on the couch. And I said, Mom, what's going on? She's sweating profusely. She didn't know who I was. Now, my mother was 39, 40 at the time. And she's like, what? Who are you? Where am I? And I'm like, Mom, what's going on? Like, this flu is really getting to you. And she's like, well, who's grandmother? Like, is she okay? And I'm like, she's going to be all right, but something's not right. So the ambulance came and they were like, oh, it's probably just a flu. She can stay here, because she didn't want to go. She's like, no, I can't leave her. I have to take care of her. Well, I said, no, you guys, you take her. You're going to take her. We get to the hospital. Hours later, the doctor came in and said, I don't think your mom's gonna make it. She has bacterial meningitis and she's really not well. And I'm like, how does this go from a cold to this? And I researched, and I'm like, what's going on? I'm thinking something's wrong with the doctors, but come to find out that was her true diagnosis. And it wasn't that taking care of her caused it. I want to be clear about that. It was the fact that she kept ignoring the signs, ignoring her own health, that it worsened. So of course they put her in ICU. A few days later, I'm going to visit my mom. They're like, we have to monitor her. We can't let you know yet where she is, which way she's going to go. And I walked in and they were, my mother had stopped breathing. And a part of me just like, I was just done. I was tired. And, I think at that particular moment, I realized that I cannot follow this path. Like, I knew in my heart, I'm always going to have to be here for her. I knew that. But I was like, I can't see this happening to me. How can I be here for her or anyone else in this condition? And so by the grace of God, mommy made a full recovery.
I'm so
yes. Until this day, she's still taking care of everybody, but she learned, most importantly, that she does have to take care of her health. She goes to her doctor's appointments before I can even say anything to her. She's like, it is April 19th. I don't know who's busy, but I got to go to the doctor. And that's a blessing, because that part of her life right there could have just been over.
Yeah.
And I really don't blame her for it. I went through a period where I was really upset with her, but I don't blame her, because at that point in time, she thought she was my great-grandmother's only resource, the only person that she could count on. And that's what happened. There's a sense of duty. There's a lack of awareness of what type of resources, other resources are out there. There's limited resources. And people tend to say, it's your fault, you stepped into it. And no, it's not. It's so many other factors that play a part in someone saying, I'm going to become this person's caregiver. So I hope that answers the question, but my whole point is just awareness, the mental health of the person who's taking on that responsibility is also key and important. Community, like Mischelle said, so that we all, this is an ecosystem. We all have to feed each other and inform each other and support each other. I don't care how far you are in this world away from me. I may need something you have, even if it's a smile.
I love that.
So
I love that. Thank you both for sharing. And again, as you're coming in and joining, right now we're kind of talking about just the mental health and how as caregivers we can take care of that. Again, feel free to drop your questions, thoughts in the chat, because we do want this to be something that can be interactive, something that you can take something away. I want to shift a little bit, even though we're still talking about the mental health piece. I want to shift to Jennifer, because Jennifer, I know part of, as you mentioned, what started your business was because of the experience and the emotion behind relocating your father to a new location. And can you just talk about that? Because we get that so often in our Facebook group. That question comes up. What do? I feel guilty. Am I failing my loved one? So can you talk about just your experience and even, again, how that motivated you to do what you're doing now?
Sure, absolutely. I'm happy to share this. And, it was something I think that all of you that are in this group today are way ahead of where I was, because when I got the diagnosis that my dad had dementia, I didn't come to these caregiving support groups like you guys are doing right away. And I was very lost. I was really reaching out and trying to see anyone who had been through the process before to kind of guide and help me. And so I think you guys are definitely going to walk away today ahead of a lot of people, just knowing what you're going to find out today. And so I hope that this is really beneficial for you. For my dad, it was really, really tough. In 2018, he got diagnosed with dementia, and we're like, what does this even mean for us? Like, what do we do next? And he was living in a single family home in Fairfax Station, and we could start to see that the house wasn't being cared for. Things were getting forgotten and things like that. And so I was like, first, I think I need to just sit down and talk to him and ask him if he's aware that he has this, because it can be really tough to understand what's happening. And I think when your loved ones are telling you that you don't remember things or that you're forgetting things, it can be frustrating for that person to hear that. And so I wanted to be on the same page with him and be in his corner. So I really first sat down with him and was like, do you recognize that you're having some memory issues or having some things that you're forgetting and stuff like that? And he said, yes, I feel stupid. And oh my gosh, did that break my heart. And I was like, this is a chemical thing that's happening. This is something that you cannot control. You cannot, I'm here for you through this, and it is okay that this is happening. And so he just felt like, okay, I don't have to try to put this mask on, that I know what's going on and that I know everything that's happening, because she's okay with it. The next thing was the car. So we didn't know what to do about driving, because we did start to see the car kind of being parked a little bit differently or things like that. There were no accidents or anything, but we were like, this is not safe. And I didn't want to be the one to take it. So I actually was advised to have the doctor be the one to tell him. So we went back in and she said, hey, you know what, with this diagnosis, that means that you no longer can have a license. So we have to take it. That made him hate the doctor, but he did not hate me. And so we were able to, I sat with him and cried about it, because I was like, I don't want to take your independence like this, and I was like, can we reframe this? Can you think of me as your chauffeur? haven't you always wanted a driver? Hasn't everyone wanted a driver? So we tried to make it fun where we could. And I was like, where do you want to go? You know, let's go places together. Now I have a full-time job and a baby. So that was challenging. And the next thing was, okay, this house is too big. So what we did, we actually switched houses. He took over my townhouse and I took over his house. And we just switched, and he no longer had as much maintenance. Not everybody has that ability, but my brother lived with him in the basement and you know, was there to be around with him. But I realized that like I physically can't drive him everywhere he wants to go and do everything. And my mental health, about a year prior, I had had like a nervous breakdown because I was like having paranoia about this with him. I was scared for him. I was just afraid about what was going to happen. There was so much unknown. And so I ended up getting in-home care people to come to the house. And we did that for about 9 hours a day. And they were okay. You know, they would take him. I would have like all the things about medicine and food and things he liked to do. And I would be like, okay, please, you know, can you take him out to do activities? Because he's bored and he's lonely. And so they did that with him for a while. But when it became dangerous was when I decided about the assisted living. And that was so hard, you guys. It took me a year to move him because we were kind of in the middle of COVID. And I was like, I do not want him to be like totally in his room, restricted by himself. So I waited that out. He didn't move in until 2021. But I think I probably emailed the people at Tribute at the Glen like 100 times before I ever even went and toured the place. And then it was like, I need to get comfortable with this. And I was like, am I taking his freedom from him? Am I taking his independence from him? Like the guilt was it was hard. What the deciding factor for me was I am not a doctor. I am not someone who is versed in this. I don't know what I'm doing. As much as I love him and care about him, he needs medication. He needs people there if he falls. He needs people there if he's hurt. He needs the people there at night if he wanders out of his room. You know, I can't be woken up in the middle of the night from screaming. My daughter, you know, having him, you know, it was just really, I was like, I am actually feeling like I'm neglecting him by not sending him somewhere. That was just my thought. Yeah, you know, please don't take that as anything. Whatever, everyone's situation is different. But for me, I was like, I am not able to give him as much as they could give him there. So finally, I was like, okay, we're going to move. And this transition is going to be awful. How are we going to do this? Should he see it? Should he see the move happen? The answer is no. They should not watch the move happen. It is traumatizing for them. So what we ended up doing, my husband, my brother, and our best friend took him out to play golf, hit golf balls. He was hitting other people's golf balls, but that's okay. And I went to his house. I took everything that would make it feel like home. And I brought it, I worked with movers. I set it all up in the unit. And when he got there, he was like, it looks like home. And my heart, you guys, I had been crying in the closet before that. And the movers were like, you've never had to go through anything like this before, have you? And I was like, no. And they were like, you know, for him to say he felt like it was like home and to not have to watch things get pulled from his house and things like that. Was so helpful. And the only other thing I can say about the assisted living place was I did ask them if we could come on a day that they would be doing something that seemed appealing to him. So he loved music. And when we went to tour, they were doing karaoke. And so he was like, when can I move in? And he saw that he could have friends and have community. And he really, really, really thrived when he moved in, but it did take about 2 weeks for him to get adjusted. So we actually had the in-home care people go with him and sit with him for the first 2 weeks to start the transition, like what he was comfortable with and used to. And then they kind of pulled back as he got comfortable and used to the new people. And I do have more I can share on all that, but I think I've taken up enough time. We can switch to someone else.
I so appreciate you sharing that. And I've heard that story, of course, before, in other, events that you've been at, and it touches me every single time because I can appreciate that, what you went through. And I'm just so grateful that you even share that experience. I do want to acknowledge in the chat, we have from Sherry Drake, which says that my dad was in a bad situation. I relocated him and took his keys. My dad came up missing for 24 hours, also relinquished his rights to drive also. And I ended up quitting my job. So I am my dad's caregiver. So let's give some love to Sherry. Thank you for sharing that. I know that's tough. Sherry, I see you nodding. Do you want to tap in again? Like I said, I want this to be interactive. So make sure those of you that are on, feel free to drop in the chat, so we can have you, talking. So Sherry, what did you want to share?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. A lot of what Ms. Jennifer said, I could relate to a lot of it. My dad was in a bad situation. I had to end up, it was like, I didn't even know he was diagnosed with dementia. And I started noticing things because I live in Alabama and he lived in Texas. And so when he would call me, hey, I hadn't talked to you in a while. I said, okay, Daddy, I was driving or something. And I said, I'm gonna call you right back. He'll turn around and call me back in 5 minutes and say, hey, I hadn't talked to you in a long time. And I was like, okay, something's not right. And I would go visit, but then I would go visit like twice a year or something. So I beefed it up, I moved it up so I can try to be there when doctors. And that's when I found out he had dementia and was diagnosed in 2019. So I had to make a decision, especially when he got lost in a car. He came up missing for 24 hours, y'all, 24 hours. And nobody knew. And even he just showed up at his house one evening. He left about 2:30, 3 o'clock that afternoon. And then he showed up Tuesday night around 6 o'clock. He can't tell us where he was. So when I decided to go there, I said, well, I'm getting his keys. I'm taking the car. Now, my dad is a retired military, 31 years in the Army. He's been living. My mother already had passed away in 2008. So I'm the oldest child. My sibling was living there with him. He was taking advantage of his memory loss, wasn't helping him. Daddy didn't have his medicine. He wasn't eating. He's 6'2". He was only 200 pounds. When I say it was a nightmare, then I realized his house was full of bed bugs. So I had to send him to a friend's house, gut the house myself. My sibling would not help me. I didn't know anybody because I have left there over 25 years. I've been in Alabama about 25 years now. But anyway, I wasn't gonna say all this, but that's what I can relate. I had to gut his house, but he wasn't there. So I can understand what Miss Jennifer was saying. Don't let him see all that, because I still had to bring him back to the house after I got it fumigated and cleaned and gutted. And then he's like, well, where's my stuff? Where's my furniture? My parents were living in that house before my mom died, over 30 years. And so that's all he knew. And then I decided, okay, I'm bringing him back here to Alabama because I know more people here. I worked for doctors. The doctors said they would help me if I needed their help. And they did. And that's what I did. Now, I was not as honest as Miss Jennifer was with him. I had to do the sneaky thing. Come on, Dad, let's go on a trip. We're going on a trip. When am I going back? Yeah, I thought you want to hang out with me for a little while. That's how I did it. Was it the right thing? I didn't want to lie to him, but I had I didn't know how else to handle it, So yeah, I can relate to pretty much everything what y'all are saying. I've been dealing with, so this is my second year with him. Me and him, I brought him back here to Alabama. We're living here together. It's just me and him. I do have a sitter that comes and helps me twice a week. His family's not helping at all. I'm doing a lot of this by myself. I
Yeah.
have a couple of girlfriends that come and try to help me out. This little man, he's still trying to flirt. So, but I'm gonna end it now, y'all. I'm gonna end it now. But I just wanted to share that. But I did understand what Miss Jennifer and what Miss Elethia was saying, and I do, and I'm listening to Miss Mischelle too about, everybody. I mean, you guys are touching on a lot that I know I personally need.
Oh,
I would love to
thank you.
just I would love to chime in just to respond to that a little bit. Thank you so much for sharing and being here. And I know it's a lot living with the person that you're caring for, because it can be really, really tough when there's no escape for you from it. So you almost feel like you're living it too. I kind of felt like at the time I was like setting up Social Security and I was setting up all this stuff. I was like, okay, so I'm 35 and 67 at the same time. Like, this is a lot on me, right? And the thing is, I think what you said about like having to kind of say, this is what we're doing, there's nothing wrong with that. Because the thing is that really helped me was, basically remembering that after 5 minutes, he's not going to remember what we just talked about. And so if you can make him happy and comfortable in the moment, that's the most important thing. So he would call me sometimes from assisted living and be like, oh, I need my tools. I need them from the garage. And I'm like, do I need to actually go and drive them over there? Or do I just say, okay, I'm happy to bring them to you. Would tomorrow be okay? And he would say, sure. And then he would forget, right? So it would be okay. And you know what? I did bring him his blower and he blew the hallway. So whatever. Whatever floated his boat, right? And I did bring a little toolbox so we could just have it. But in the moment, being comfortable, so not saying you're wrong, just saying, oh wow, that's interesting. Those kind of things can help you to like not combat with them.
Yeah, and I think this is a perfect time to segue over to Sydney, because of course the overarching theme here is dementia, right? And I know again, in seeing in our private groups and then in our Facebook group, that is often the question as to, well, what does this really mean, right? What is dementia? Some people are like, I don't know if it's Alzheimer's, I don't know if it's this. So Sydney, our expert, can you first just talk about what is dementia? What is that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and a question I get all the time from caregivers and when I go out and do presentations. So dementia is a very overarching term. I kind of think of it as an umbrella term. And so Alzheimer's is one type of dementia. And oftentimes people will get those two words confused and think that either they mean the same thing or that Alzheimer's and dementia are two separate diseases, while in reality, Alzheimer's is one form of dementia. So dementia in general is not a specific disease. It's just a category of many, many different diseases and conditions. It's actually over 80 different diseases and conditions that can cause dementia. And it's changes in the brain that affect judgment, thinking, memory. Unfortunately, dementia is not reversible. And it's really categorized by at least two parts of the brain that are starting to decline. And dementia is both physical, so physical changes in the brain that are happening, as well as chemical, which is one of the reasons that you might notice sometimes your loved one is really able to do something and a lot more alert, one day, and then the next day, things seem a lot worse. And that's because there's that chemical component to it. There are, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but just to make things more confusing, there's other conditions that are reversible that do look a bit like dementia. So delirium from a UTI. And I would kind of guess actually, Elethia, when you were telling the story about your mom, when she couldn't remember who you were for that moment, that was probably a delirium caused by the illness. So that was, of course, reversible. Urinary tract infections can cause that. Depression can look a lot like dementia. I see in the chat someone asked about the stages. So I'll talk a little bit about the stages. I will say the type of dementia you have also really affects the stages. So Alzheimer's is definitely the most common form of dementia. Vascular dementia is about one of the second most common forms. That's caused by cardiovascular disease, diabetes, strokes. And that can come on very, very suddenly, like right after a cardiac event, or it can be a lot more gradual. Lewy body dementia is another form of dementia that looks a little bit like Parkinson's disease. So people will have the dementia symptoms as well as these movement issues. So tremors, issues with walking, shuffling, kind of a stooped gait. There's also Parkinson's with dementia, which generally the symptoms of Parkinson's, so those movement issues, will come on first, and then we start to see the dementia symptoms. And then generally the fifth most common cause is frontal temporal. So for folks that haven't heard of frontal temporal, it generally is diagnosed pretty young, so in the 40s or 50s. And the big hallmark is changes in personality. So someone will suddenly start acting very, very differently to how they ever acted before, really losing empathy, no social inhibitions. So I will talk about the stages very, very broadly, but it is a little bit different depending on the type. However, many of you might be sitting there thinking, well, I don't know what type my loved one has. The doctor never told me. And that is also very, very common. So there is no one test for dementia. What the doctors do is they look at everything else and try to rule out, is this an infection? Is this a thyroid issue? Is this mental health? And eventually they come down to, well, it must be dementia. There's some things they can see in CAT scans and PET scans in terms of Alzheimer's, but many of this is not really diagnosable until after death when they can see the brain. So many, many people are getting a diagnosis of just dementia itself or neurocognitive disorder. You might have seen that as well. So the beginning stages are probably all things that you have seen. So it's just kind of that general forgetfulness, leaving things on the stove, forgetting, dates here and there. I talked to a caregiver once and I asked her, what were some of the things you noticed at first? And she said, well, I thought my husband was just trying to drive me crazy because he wasn't listening to me. He wasn't doing what I told him to do. He just was forgetting everything. And that's generally what's going on in the beginning. As people progress, they might start having trouble remembering names. They might have more trouble with dates, and they start losing a lot of that judgment. So problem solving becomes tricky. And that might be, crossword puzzles are hard in the beginning, and then towards the end, that could be, what are the steps for me to sit down in this chair? And that actually needs to be broken down. So people really, really lose that critical thinking and that problem solving. Vision also will change as people progress. So for most of us, we have pretty good peripheral vision, and that decreases naturally with age. But as folks in the beginning stages of dementia, it becomes a bit more like a scuba mask. So people do lose a lot of the vision on the side. As it further progresses, it's a bit more like binoculars. And then as it further progresses, folks will end up with more of a monocular vision, which not only they lose all this peripheral vision, but then it's hard to see depth perception. So if you've ever noticed your loved one maybe walking around a dark carpet or picking at a pattern on a shirt, thinking that they can kind of pick those things up, that might be because they've lost that depth perception at this point. Hallucinations and delusions are also fairly common with dementia, and that's, I think, a hard one because a lot of caregivers don't realize that can happen, and they want to, correct their loved one, or they think that they might be having some sort of like mental health break at the same time. But those can be pretty common with folks, thinking that there's a loved one there that's long since passed, or they're in a different place. I see paranoia. Is that a common initial symptom? Yes. Paranoia can definitely come up in the beginning. And if you kind of think of it from people's perspective, maybe they're saying, I've always remembered to put my keys away in the right spot. I've never ever had this problem my whole life. Somebody else must be coming in and changing things. Somebody else must be moving my stuff. And that's a really kind of easy, confabulations is the term for that. People are kind of filling in the holes in their memories. And for folks that have had trouble with their loved one not recognizing that they have dementia or not wanting to accept that, denial is certainly a big part of it. But for some people, they have, and I always get this word wrong, it's anosognosia. And it basically means that the part of the brain that allows you to be self-aware about your disease has been damaged. So for those folks, there is no amount of convincing, no amount of kind of proof showing that you can do that would make them accept this. That sometimes shows up with folks that have mental illness as well. So sometimes it feels like you're hitting against a brick wall. And like those conversations about driving that, Jennifer was able to have with her dad, for some folks, you're not able to have those because they are never going to accept that they have this situation and that they're forgetting things. And in fact, when we have those conversations, they're thinking, you're crazy, you have a problem, you're trying to take over my life. Why are you doing this to me? Because they can't see that they're having issues themselves. So that was a lot. I don't want to keep going. I feel like like Jennifer said, I could talk about dementia for a very long time. So I will hand it over or see if there's any other questions.
There's the few things in the chat, so I want to make sure we address that. So the first one, regarding anyone taking care of their spouse, and I'm not going to say the names because again, okay, you're fine with it. Okay, so Bart asked the question about that. And I think that actually is really worth kind of mentioning because depending on your role, right, as the caregiver, you're going to have a completely different experience. And so if you are someone who's taking care of a spouse, feel free to just show Bart a little love and support in the chat. But it really is interesting because I started this program because many things, but we have a loved one who has dementia. And so I'm the daughter. And what's interesting, my stepfather is her primary care, her primary caregiver. Her relationship with him and with us is completely different. And so I do think that the spouses, you all really, really get just the brunt of a lot of the stress that comes with it. So I definitely would like to speak more to that if anyone wants to chime in. But Sydney, can you give even just some specific or special tips for spouses? Because I feel like they
just
might
put
have
that out there just from the standpoint of it. I came in a little late, so it seemed like everybody who was speaking was talking about their father or the mother, and that's I believe me, I completely understand. It's just I think having to deal with your spouse is just a different dynamic. That's all.
Yeah, and it really is. And I would say in my program, we work almost, I wouldn't say primarily with spouses, but many of the caregivers in the program are spouses. And it's hard, and in all situations, I think your relationship is changing. But in that situation, it really is. But the person doesn't always see that and recognize that, and having to take away someone's, ability to drive or manage finances can be
We've done
not
that
only
already,
really
yes.
hard for the person, but also really hard for you. We have a lot of caregivers in our program who they had very traditional gender roles in their marriage. And now, the wife's in her 80s and she's saying, I've never managed the finances before, and that, I'm in my 30s and I don't like managing my own finances. I can't imagine having to do it for the first time in
Yeah,
my
I
80s.
do everything in my house.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think something too is, coming to terms with the denial or the acceptance ourselves is something that is really helpful too. Like I was like, I don't want to accept the fact that this is happening to my dad at first. And I wanted to push it away. And I wanted anytime that it would come up, I would want to be pushing it away. And when I finally said, okay, I accept that this is a chapter of his life, and we've had many chapters that have been wonderful, and this chapter is going to be a little tough. I was able to see like things a little bit differently instead of saying, I never wanted it to be this way. I didn't think this was going to be how things were going to end up. I have kind of compartmentalized it into chapters, and it's really helped me. And one other thing I would say is me saying, at some point I determined you can't fix it. What you can do is show love. So I don't know about you guys, but I felt awkward even just going and sitting down for dinner because we couldn't communicate. And I was like, you know what? When I realized I cannot fix it and I can just rub his back while he eats, that's something I can do.
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I can just sit
completely.
sit next to him. We don't have to talk at all. Kind of coming to peace in terms with it myself. Go ahead, Bart.
Oh no, I'm completely apologize for interrupting. I do that constantly. I'm going to mute myself right after this because otherwise you will hear me 24 hours a day, and believe me, you'll all be hanging up. I'll see all the things clicking off. No, I was just going to say that. I mean, truthfully, in my situation, and I'm sure in everybody else's spousal situation as well as yours, I think the toughest part or the toughest part of the situation is not my wife having Alzheimer's, because truthfully, I believe she's relatively fine. She's very happy. She's not angry. She's nothing like that. She's still as sweet as can be, even though her memory is really non-existent. But the point I was trying to make or trying to get to was that the most difficult part is me trying to have a relationship because of somebody who can't remember what happened 10 seconds ago. You can't have a conversation about what you watched on TV or what the neighbors are doing, or whatever that conversation entails. So because of that, it's just a very lonely existence from the caregiver side. From my wife's side, she's, like I said, she really is as happy as can be. My side, it's just something I have to do, but it surely doesn't make it easy. And with that, I will literally mute myself because you will be tired of hearing from me in about 2 seconds. But yeah, it's a different dynamic. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we all can agree. First of all, Bart, thank you for sharing that, like virtual hugs, because many of us, many caregivers are experiencing, and just thank you for having that courage to even just speak on behalf of what so many are feeling and experiencing, and they're carrying guilt around that. So I just want to say that, Sydney, I'm gonna turn it over.
Yeah, I thank you so much, Bart, for sharing. And I've been watching the chat really kind of explode over here, which is great. And I wanted to point out, I saw a specific comment about sex and how folks can, sex is complicated when you are the spouse of someone living with dementia, and kind of how to navigate that. And I think it's actually something that comes up a lot in our program, but I don't hear it as much in caregiver support groups. It doesn't come up as much in the literature because I think it's hard to talk about. So I just wanted to highlight that piece, that folks sometimes have a hard time, one, navigating, is this okay as my loved one is progressing? And I think that is very individual, if someone is able to consent or not. Just because someone has a diagnosis doesn't necessarily mean that they can't consent to sexual activity. But we also sometimes see where the person living with dementia is trying to initiate. And sometimes those social inhibitions are a little bit lowered. So it might be inappropriate times, using inappropriate language. And it's really hard for caregivers to navigate that. Wives, I hear this a lot of, I often just give in, even though I don't want to. And trying to really empower folks that just because you're someone's caregiver, and you kind of previously had this role, you do really have the right to say, no, I don't want to do that right now, just as you would hopefully earlier in the marriage or relationship. And it's kind of a funny thing that we get into as social workers here, but there's other ways that they can engage in that doesn't have to involve you if you are not wanting to do that right now. And that's okay. And it can be hard, definitely hard to talk about. And if it's something that's becoming a big issue, chatting with someone's doctor about it as well can help. So I just wanted to highlight that piece because I just think it's something that's really under talked about.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to
Lita, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to jump in on one of the comments I saw about never having any time and taking care of themselves or wanting to get a break. And I totally get that. And so we have to learn to find breaks where we can. And just in our normal everyday actions, that's where you find your breaks. So one of my favorite things is the shower, or what I call a dark shower. Actually going in there and being mindful about the process is, as the water is falling over you, feel it. Where is it touching your body? How does it make you feel? Sometimes even crying in the shower is therapeutic. And so using the shower, I do what I call 3-minute power pockets, because sometimes all we get are 3 minutes during the day. And those are things that I do for my clients. And I actually created one for in the bathroom. Sometimes, remember as a mom, you never got a break. Even in the bathroom, the kids were, Mom. Well, in this instance, the bathroom may be the only break you get while I hate to say this, but while you're sitting on that stool. So how do you use that time? How do you use that to be mindful and work through that? But those things, even as you're folding clothes, if you have faith or are strong in faith, praying over those clothes, praying over that person as you're folding the clothes, as you're putting them away, or just thinking about memories or moments during that time, because you taught me about those moments. So it's not memories, it's moments. So, but using those few minutes, those few seconds that you have, and that becomes your mindful break, and a break that you have, without physically taken away, or stepping outside and just feeling the sun on your face, or staring out a window. But take the moments that you do get and make them work for you.
I love that. And I'm going to take a moment and read the chats because, again, I do want this forum to be, sometimes we just want to be heard, right? Sometimes we, especially like you said, some of them are taking care of your loved one, and maybe it's just you and them, or you feel guilty, but this is an opportunity to feel like you're being heard. So I'm going to read some of these. I will say the names unless I get kind of like a no, don't say. But Brenda says, my problem is that I am a full-time caregiver to my mom and I do not get a break. I am more frustrated than anything, and my mom has Alzheimer's. So Brenda, we want to just give you that virtual hug. Yes, we know that that's tough. Yes, yes. And then Kelly, I'm gonna come back to your question because that's an actual question, and we'll get our experts to answer that. And then Brenda also shared that the sleeping. So she says, I can't sleep at night because I'm so stressed out. We moved from Florida to Alabama to be closer to her family. So I have sacrificed everything. I no longer can work because I have to take care of her. Big hugs, Brenda. Big
I would
hugs.
love to share something that helped me. There are a lot of things on Spotify for sleep. It's like a deep sleep meditation. I'm sure you guys in the health world can talk more about this. There's also white noise as well as brown noise and green noise and all of that stuff that can really help you get into a deep sleep. One of the ones I really like, I can share afterwards, but it kind of is like relax your eyeballs, like relax your eyelids. It's like you're focusing on the little things that instead of your mind going at night and all the things you're worried about, it really helps you to relax. So I would use some of those tools to, as you're falling asleep, to maybe help you get into a deeper sleep.
And I was gonna say before we even read the rest, Coach E, what do you want to say to Brenda with what she's going through? What can we give her?
Yeah, and first I want to hold space for you and thank you for all that you're doing, because I know that's sometimes rare to hear thank you. When it comes to sleep, sleep is so important to our health. And so that has to be a part of your personal care and commitment to yourself. Now, when it comes to sleep and falling asleep, and you combine that with stress, that can be a challenge. There's something called yoga nidra. And with yoga nidra, you pretty much, you lie still in bed, you turn everything off. Some people like complete darkness, some not as much. And you focus on the parts of your body from your toes to your legs, to your torso, to your arms, to your fingertips, to your neck, to your face, to the crown of your head. And you allow yourself to be present and non-judgmental. So if you're hearing the noises out on the street, go from hearing the noises outside of the room to what's in the room, to your own breath. And you may think, Elethia, I don't have an hour to do this. Do you have 5 minutes? Take 5 minutes. You're worth it. You're worth it. So take the first part of that morning and dedicate that to you. At night, in bed, dedicate that to you. And then you can work from around that. Because also when you're not getting sleep, mentally, how can you be present? How can you fully show up for that person that you want to care for?
Thank you. Thank you, Coach E. I don't know about the rest of you all, but her voice is so soothing. I was finding myself getting relaxed. We might have to get you on an audio for our caregivers or something, Elethia. Okay, I'm gonna move to Darlene because
I just want to say something, Liletta, real quick.
Sure, of course.
Thank you so much, Elethia. Thank you so much, both of you, because I'm struggling. I know Liletta sees all my messages on Facebook, and I cry all the time. It's hard. It's really hard. Thank you.
Thank you. Big hugs. Before we move on to anyone else want to say anything to Brenda, I just feel like we want to wrap her up in our arms. I know we have some others, so we're gonna give everybody that their time and space Anyone else from our panel want to say anything specifically to Brenda?
I just feel for you.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry for what you're going through, and I know it's all you want to do is cry.
Yeah.
And I think crying is healing. So I don't think I see it as a bad thing. It's good that you're letting it out and like really letting yourself heal as you're going through that. So I think remember to be a good friend to yourself. You're being such a good friend to the person that you're caring for. And you know how to be a good friend, right? That's the thing that you know how to do. Just remember to be that for yourself.
But the problem that I have, Jennifer, is I'm a loving person, but I get so upset at my mom that like I feel more like a drill sergeant than a daughter. And there's no love and compassion when I'm trying to tell her how to do stuff all day long. Go to the bathroom, sit like this, eat like this. It's all day until from the time I wake up to the time I go to lay down. And it don't stop.
Yeah.
I think that there are times that you just have to pick and choose what battle you're going to, do for that day. My mom will not go to the bathroom on her own. I've got the Depends, I've got Poise, I put everything in, things on the floor. And, I had just finished renovating my house and I did not want her urine or poop on my floor. So I have to put things around and you just have to, I don't tell her now to get up. Once in a while I do, but she's not. So you just have to put those things in and just some things you just have to let it go, no matter how it bothers you, but you just let it go. Because there are other things that that you do have to focus on. And I know that that's one of the things that I've learned. And yeah, just let it go. I'm with you, and I think these groups, this Zoom today is so helpful. And thank you all for being on, because it gives me strength, because I feel like crying too.
Yeah, and I'm going to have Sydney, thank you for sharing that. Sydney, I'm going to come back to you to talk about tips for exactly what they're talking about, right? When you have to kind of direct them. But I do want to read some of these before we have you do that. So Darlene said, I'm feeling like I have an elephant on my chest and I can't breathe. Even though I'm taking all possible steps to help my health, meditation, exercise, nutrition. I'm trying to get sleep, but he interrupts that with talking and flailing his arms and legs about. I'm close to having to put him in a place because I am not going to survive this if I don't. Again, Darlene, our heart goes out to you. From the panel, and I know I recently did a post about rewording kind of when we do have to relocate them to a facility. I feel like sometimes some of the shame and self-shame comes from just how we're wording it, how we're saying it. When we say we're putting them in a place, that kind of tells the mind and heart, like that just sounds harsh to ourselves, not for other people, but for ourselves. So one tip that I've been sharing is to just even change how you say it. Jennifer mentioned it earlier. Sometimes it is just beyond what we can do. So maybe even just for yourself saying, I'm relocating my loved one to a new home, right? You'd be surprised how the way we say things can even impact our emotions, how we feel about that. Anybody else from the panel? I know, Jennifer, that's your I know that's your space. But anyone else on the panel want to give some love to Darlene and maybe talk about that?
We haven't heard from Kelli, and this is in her wheelhouse too. So Kelli, would you like to speak?
I'm like a fly on the wall in this space, because I don't have any firsthand interaction with patients who have dementia, other than my memory of my great-grandmother's best friend. I just remember, in the 80s, there was a time when she stayed with us, and I was raised by my great-grandmother. She didn't have dementia, but her best friend did. And I remember she'd stay with us, and I remember there were times when she'd wander and she'd leave and we didn't know where she was. She'd leave out 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we couldn't find her. And I just remember the fear. I remember my great-grandmother calling the police, and she was in her 80s. Even then. And I just remember, how brave, she was to take care of her best friend. She had to make a lot of decisions for her best friend because her name was Lillian, Miss Little, and she didn't have any children. She didn't have anyone caring for her. It was my great-grandmother, and us, her extended family, if you will. And I just remember my great-grandmother made a lot of decisions for her, and she ultimately ended up going into a nursing care facility. And I just remember we'd visit her and things like that. But that whole time, I'm listening to your stories, and it just makes me remember that time. And as a little one, you don't know what someone is really feeling on the inside, but I'm listening to all of you, and I can't imagine what my great-grandmother must have felt and what you guys experience daily, so my heart just really goes out to you.
Yeah.
I have, as far as mental, trying to keep your mind centered, that's always hard for all of us. All of us are having our battles, with whatever we're dealing with. And I absolutely agree how we say things to ourselves, how we talk to ourselves, how we speak to each other, what we listen to, ultimately determines how we feel and how we feel about what we're going through a lot of times. If we're saying things to ourselves that empower and enrich and make us feel better, sometimes we can tackle those things a little bit better because we feel a little bit better on the inside. So I wholeheartedly agree with that.
I agree
And
with
I
that.
just really feel for you
Yeah.
guys.
And I'm
I
glad
really do.
actually that Jennifer did tag you in, because we'll come back to some of the things in the chat and back to Sydney, but this is a good opportunity because when you are dealing, when you have a loved one that maybe you have kind of brought into your circle, right? Now you're the caregiver. There are some different options where it might be relocating them to a new home, but it also might be where you are now bringing them into your home, and you may need to get a bigger place. You may need to look into that option. So that's an excellent time to segue, Kelli, to you, and you're in the Heroes program. So can you talk about that and tell us, all of these heroes, what are some options out there?
Absolutely. Mine is a very lighthearted piece to this panel today. I just want to acknowledge all of you guys. Thank you guys for what you do for your loved ones. And you are considered community heroes as far as I'm concerned. What it is, you really are. You really, really are. And everybody in this room is eligible for this program. It doesn't matter where you are. It's a national program. And as ultimately what it is, Homes for Heroes is an organization that rewards our community heroes. So caregivers such as yourselves, anyone in healthcare, teachers, firefighters, law enforcement, our great military, I think I said law enforcement, and EMS, first responders, all of them are community heroes. And ultimately, if you purchase a home utilizing one of our real estate professionals, either an agent, myself, there's also title, all of those people who will offer discounts to you in the form of a rebate when you purchase a home. And like I said, it doesn't matter where you are in the country. It's a national program. Homes for Heroes not only does that, but it also takes a portion of what we of what's donated to the organization, and they donate it to the Homes for Heroes Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that gives grant money to those other nonprofits who service our heroes, like those who service our firefighters, law enforcement, our fallen soldiers, teachers, healthcare workers. Anyone who gives back to those communities will also qualify and be eligible for additional grant money. It's just a fabulous organization. I love it. Like I said, I am a lender and I'm a mortgage lender, and through me, you'll get an appraisal credit. And through one of the realtor partners that we have, you'll get money back when you close on the home. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Yes.
Thank you. And
You know,
actually,
because you guys spend a lot of money taking care of your loved ones, you know, so every little bit helps, right?
Yes.
So you'll get rewarded back for what you do in that way through my organization.
I would like to segue. We have looked into the Homes for Heroes program and have applied to become a part of it as well. So I'm really glad
That is fantastic, Jennifer. I love it. Well, you know what, Jennifer, you and I will partner because I happen to work with the #1 mortgage brokerage with Homes for Heroes in the country.
Perfect.
So yeah, so believe me, and we do a lot.
Because it is expensive, you are right. And the whole transition, I would like to segue a little bit into that financial piece is I set up Social Security for my dad as one of the things that helped supplement. I rented his house out to a military family for 4 years with a 7% increase per year. And that's one of the things I wanted to share with you guys is I do have the resources for donation companies, consignment sale people, estate sale people, estate attorneys that can help with paperwork, as well as myself. Like I said, with the whole transition of the staging that I did for my dad, I'm offering that service to anybody who needs to move someone and wants it to feel like home and doesn't want them to see it or be a part of it themselves either. We can help with the move process. We can help rent your house out. We can help sell your house, and help have some finances in place to be able to afford to move to that assisted living community. So I just wanted to share that if you need some financial support in this, we can help you find, you know, together, Kelly and I can help you find ways to supplement some of these things that are happening.
Absolutely. I am fully on board. Liletta, I am happy to help in any way I can.
I love it. And make sure to put your link. Someone is asking Kelly for that link. So
sure.
Be sure to put that.
Absolutely.
And Jennifer, are you beyond the DMV area?
Yes, I'm DC, Maryland, Virginia. My team is. I'm licensed in Virginia. Then every city throughout the US, we have vetted, trusted agents that we have personally met and spoken with. So if there are people in other areas of the US, we can connect you with a trusted person who can help with this specific need. So please do feel free if you're not in the DMV to ask for a connection.
Yeah, and I am also licensed in the DMV in North Carolina. But as far as Homes for Heroes, it is national. It is in every state. So if you are in a state that I happen to not be licensed, just let me know and I will refer you to an agent who can help you.
And you know, my caregivers out there, isn't that just a breath of fresh air? Like we're always dealing with just so, you know, bad news, I'll say, and the stress. But that's why I was so excited that Kelly and Jennifer could join us today to just bring that, like, wait a minute, there's something for us.
Yes. It's like, I want to take stuff off your plate, like put the stuff on my plate. I will take care of it for you. We have a team of people to help handle it.
It's exciting. It really is. And Jennifer, your story was just, I mean, it just really touched my heart. I'm just thinking, wow, these people are incredible. I love what I do, especially when I'm speaking to a group like this. You guys deserve it more than anybody in this world. Are you kidding me?
Thank you.
This was my honor.
Thank you.
Lita, can I jump in on the military side of things? I'm a military vet, and I wanted to also throw in there that there are things available for those who are vets. And the reason I'm talking is because a lot of the Vietnam vets have never went through the process of getting things that they deserve. And one of the things is my father just went through that process. And he went from 10% all the way to 100% disability. And in going through that process, you know, because they wouldn't speak out, they didn't go through the process of finding out, you know, they've gone through a lot of the things that they're giving people money for, that the government is talking about, like the Agent Orange and all this.
Yeah.
And now he has the ability to have assisted living in his home because he qualifies, because now he's 100% disabled. And so these are things that, if we could just get those people who are part of the military to speak up, to go after what they are due.
Yeah.
They serve their country. Yes, yes.
And also, if there are anyone who's disabled, through the VA, you are exempt from the funding fee through the VA loan. I'm happy to help you guys with that. I do all the loans. So, all kinds of down payment assistance, things like that. I'm happy to help out. So not just, you got all kinds of stuff that I can offer you, not just Homes for Heroes, but you're definitely eligible for that too.
I love it. Again, I just thank you. I saw Sherry doing this. This is exciting. Again, it's nice to just kind of get good news of things that can help us. So I know we're going to wrap up around 5:30 our time. So I do want to circle back. Let's see. There was something I wanted to read here in the chat from Shelly. So Shelly says, hello, everyone. So glad to be listening. I'm my brother's primary caregiver. He is 52 and he was just recently diagnosed with vascular dementia. He has heart disease and type 2 diabetes. He was a CDL truck driver since 1997 when he went into the military. There we go. And now can no longer drive at all. He has been living with me since August 2023. He is in stages 5, 6, we think. And every day is something different and challenging. So glad I found this group. We are so glad to have you here, Shelly. We'll pause to give you that love, that virtual hug. So I do want to circle back to Sydney. So many were talking about having to speak, I don't want to say harsh, right? I just talked about the power of words, right? But maybe assertive, right? To our loved ones. Can you talk about that? What are some tips, advice? It's hard. It's hard, right? When we feel like we may know that they can't help it, but it's hard to remember that in the moment. So, I mean, what can you tell us? what help?
Yeah. So when you mentioned this earlier, I started writing down a whole bunch of stuff here. And I think the first thing, just kind of going back to the conversation about sleep, starting to get good quality sleep will kind of be a game changer. So in addition to my work, my stepdad is living with Parkinson's with dementia. My mom's a full-time caregiver. They live in New York, so I'm trying to go up whenever I can. He does not sleep. He wakes up at least every single hour. So she's been really, really struggling with that piece. And yesterday she was telling me, he slept straight through the night, so she actually got to sleep. And she came in the room and he had peed on the floor. And she said, what happened here? And he said, well, you told me to do that, right? Aren't I supposed to pee on the floor? And she said, if I had gotten no sleep, I would have been so frustrated. I would not have reacted well. She said, but I got 6 hours. So I just laughed and said, nope, don't do that next time, please, and was able to move on. So I know getting good quality sleep is easier said than done, but it really, really can kind of build up that toolbox and resilience. But then in terms of in the moment, giving direction to people.
Can I ask you one question, Sydney?
Yeah.
In addition to sleep at night, what's the best amount of time for a power nap to actually be helpful during the day?
I mean, I am not a doctor. I feel like I've heard even 20 minutes can be beneficial. I've heard even if you don't actually fall asleep, having that time of just closing your eyes and being by yourself can be beneficial. I don't know, Elethia, I saw you kind of move. Or do you have a thought to that one?
Yeah.
That's such a good question. I was like, I just had this question with my sleep doctor because I was I wasn't getting enough sleep at night, and I was sleeping and I was taking naps during the day, but they were like 1-2 hours. And what happened was it was becoming a domino effect. So it was reducing the amount of time at night that I was sleeping and really throwing me off schedule. And I was like, I have a lot going on right now. You have to understand. And she was like, look, the first thing is to really take an account of how much sleep you're actually getting, and then make a plan to fall asleep an hour earlier. Like Sydney said, sometimes it's easier said than done, especially in this situation, but that may prevent you from taking like those long drawn out naps during the day. Sometimes you're taking a nap during the day, not because you're tired, because you just have so much stress on you, and sleep and closing your eyes is like the only thing you can really do at that time because it's just so heavy. And then that's when I would say sometimes instead of going to sleep, maybe go outside, take that walk, take off your shoes, ground yourself, like place your bare feet on the ground, go for 10-15 minutes around the block. But the naps, it's not that it's a terrible thing to do, it's just that sometimes it can interrupt your normal sleeping pattern.
Thank you.
I wanted to say one thing. I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I am someone who has suffered from insomnia a lot for just my whole life, essentially. And I actually take magnesium glycinate every single night. Otherwise, I can't sleep very well. It's just, I sleep so soundly. I don't wake up groggy. I can sleep through the night without any issues. Listen, it's great. If you don't have a magnesium allergy or anything, I highly recommend it if you want a good night's sleep. Coming from an insomniac,
I'll jump back to
lifelong
Sydney.
insomniac.
I am going to jump back to Sydney, but I will say to that point that make sure you have a good relationship with your pharmacist, with your loved one's pharmacist. Because even in our amazing Facebook group, there's often different recommendations. And so I will take what's been recommended, and go straight to the pharmacist, because they have access to your loved one's complete medical record, their allergies, everything. And it is amazing. I don't want to say don't go to the doctors, but the doctors can be kind of, let me just not even, I don't want to say bad things about doctors, but I will say pharmacists are really about the medicine piece, right? And they are very much about understanding the dynamics of the medication. So definitely look into certain things. I can't think of the word, but there's another one that people can take to calm them. And so that was something that the pharmacist said, yes, your mom can take up to 5 milligrams of this.
And there's ones that help
Mischelle said it's the pharmacist's specialty. Yes. So I would highly, highly recommend for those sleep questions and other type of questions like that, make sure you get that good relationship with the pharmacist, and call them and talk to them, go in. They do consultations. They're really good about that in my experience.
Yeah, and my dad, I will say, was like fighting the doctors. He was fighting the nurses. He was like really agitated and upset. And they've gotten him to the perfect thing that makes him not have paranoia, not have hallucinations. He's like very content now. It was not that way at all.
Yeah.
That was the pharmacist or his doctor?
The doctor, and then, the pharmacist. But he had a doctor that would come, once a month to the assisted living place, and they kept assessing how he was doing. And like, it kind of calmed him too much. So then he was falling asleep and like falling. So then they toned it back. But they did a couple of different combinations of things, and we've got it to a really calm place, which allows me to be a lot more calm. So there is some light at the end of the tunnel on that.
Yeah.
Well, what do you recommend if you have if
sorry.
you really have a feeling like you have a loved one who has it, or is on the beginning stages of it, and it hasn't been diagnosed, and they're, I think I asked that, you probably didn't see my question, but it was someone who's refusing to go to the doctor about it because they don't think they have anything, but I can tell there's something not right from talking to this individual.
That's a really, really hard question. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I've seen folks who refuse for so long that things get to a really, really bad point.
Mhm.
But one of the things I like to tell people, if they're kind of open to hearing this, is that there could be something going on besides dementia. I mean, dementia is a really scary word. People don't want to go to the doctor and learn that they have dementia and lose all that independence and know that they're on this downfall. But there's a lot of things, like I said, that are reversible that could be causing memory issues, that could be causing challenges. So I think talking about it more like let's go do a wellness check and just see what's going on, not I think you have dementia, and kind of framing it as something's happening. I want to make sure, you stay healthy for a long time. Yeah, someone just put in the chat, mold can even present like dementia. There's a lot of different things. And I think that makes it a little bit less scary for folks.
I also had the in-home care people bring someone into the house to do an assessment. And so there are people out there that can do that, that can visit the home and assess the person in their home so that it's a little more comfortable than the doctor's office. So if anyone needs a resource for that, I can share it.
So I know we could keep talking, but this has been amazing. And I'm just so honored that we have been able to come together, have this conversation. This is being recorded. So I know it's Mother's Day weekend, and I know many people signed up and have messaged me that they are caregiving and they could not get away. So we will be doing this again next month. Hopefully we can get our experts back again. And we have some other ones too that we're going to bring in, some ones that can help even with preparing like the medical piece and all of that. So looking forward to more good things. Before we wrap up, I just want to have each one of my panelists kind of say some final words, and make sure you have dropped your information in the chat. I will also be emailing out to those that registered, so everyone will be able to get you all's contact information as well. So I'm just going to start with Kelli, because I'm just looking at it this way. So Kelli, some final words for us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Liletta, for inviting me to speak to your panel, well, to your guests and your group. This was so enlightening for me. I learned a lot from everybody here, and I'm just really honored that you guys allowed me to speak. I did leave my information in the chat for both Homes for Heroes, as well as my main page and my phone number as well. I'd love to help everyone here.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelli. All right,
Thank you.
Mischelle, you are next.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this opportunity to help in any way that I can. You are amazing, amazing individuals. Everyone cannot do this. And the fact that you step in and you do this out of love and care for that one. And don't let anyone ever tell you anything different. And it may show up differently sometimes because you're tired, but it is out of love, 100% love. And it takes a special person to do this. And my hat's off to each and every one of you. You're not doing it because you have to. It may feel that way sometimes, but you're doing it because of the love in your heart and how you care. And so thank you for this opportunity to be in front of you. I just want to celebrate each and every one of you. And I will drop my email in the chat. And you can always reach out to me at masteringyourmonday.com, but I'll drop my email in the chat.
Thank you so much, Mischelle. Sydney.
Well, thank you. To echo what everyone else said, I'm really grateful to have been here. This was just a really wonderful hour and a half to spend with you all. And I know that taking that time as caregivers is also really hard. So I'm glad that you are all able to take that time. I guess just some closing thoughts. I think sometimes there's a lot of feelings that come up with caregiving that are not as pretty. They're kind of those ugly feelings, right? Like resentment to our loved one that, our lives have changed, and guilt and anger, and just there's a lot of stuff that comes up. And I think letting yourself feel those so you're able to feel it and then move past it is really, really important. Because if we're kind of just pushing down those things that we think I shouldn't feel that way. I should be, you know, a good daughter. I should be a good wife. I shouldn't have this, you know, resentment or this anger. You're never going to really get past it. And I feel like I was thinking, you know, a lot of this presentation was advice and us sharing. But, you know, you all know your situations the best. You know your loved one, you know what's going on. And a lot of people give a lot of advice around caregiving, and I'm sure you get that a lot in your lives. And that can be really hard. I know that's something that my mom is struggling with, you know, folks that aren't helping at all are coming in and putting their 2 cents in. And it's really hard to not just like snap back at them. But just kind of know, I think a lot of that is coming from a good place and people want to help, and that inclination just to listen and kind of hold space for the hard things that you're feeling. Not everyone knows how to do that. So they think, well, let me just try to help. Let me just tell you that first thing that pops into my head, even when they don't have that same experience that you do. So just kind of remembering you guys really are the experts in what's going on.
Beautiful. Thank you. Jennifer?
Perfect, because I have a segue to that. You know, I appreciate you guys all being here. Thank you so much. And you know, I also think that people will really put their 2 cents in and give you advice or put expectations on you that you don't necessarily need to have on you. And I think honestly, expectations are like the worst thing that you could have, right? Like if you could let go of expectations for yourself for a second, feel the weight that's lifted. And so if you can realize, like, are the expectations that I'm having on myself ones that I have for myself, or that I think that someone else has for me? You know, kind of assessing how you're feeling and like why can really help to alleviate some of that guilt and expectation you're having for yourself. And something else I wanted to share when Brenda was talking was, you know, this is a different relationship that you have now. So kind of accepting that it's a different relationship. You have so much love for this person. You want for them what their life used to be. They've changed. Their mind has, their whole world has changed. And it's okay that it has changed for you too. And so I just wanted to share that, you know, it's okay for you to say, you know, this is my new role in their life. And I'm going to handle it with, okay, I'm going to have to be a little direct through some of these things that they just don't know how to do. Like I would tell a kid how to put on their shoes or tie them. You know, and there are resources and things you can use. Like, I mean, you were even saying about diapers, right? Like my dad now has that. So that because every single time I can't help him determine how to use the restroom. But that's a thing that I can do so that, you know, kind of like a little kit. And so are there things that you could be doing to help yourself kind of not have to go through all of those things all the time? But just, you know, give yourself a little bit of grace and realize that you're human. And I hope that that is empowering for you, just to remember that you're human. And it's okay to be mad and it's okay not to put so much expectation on yourself. So I'll just share that, like, I thought I had to go down and visit my dad every day at the assisted living and be there every day. He didn't know if I was there. I would call him when I got home and he didn't even know I was just there. So if you need a minute, take a minute. You don't have to go every day. You don't have to do every minute. So take some time for yourself, and I hope that's helpful.
That's very helpful. All right, Elethia.
Yes. Well, I am honored to share space with you, and thank you for sharing this space with us and everyone being so transparent and sharing your stories. I do admire you because it takes a certain type of person to do your work, and not everyone is built for it. I watched, when I shared that story about my mom, I didn't intro the story correctly. My mom was taking care of my grandmother who had dementia. And I watched my entire family turn against my mom when she got sick. And it was hard. And my mom had to learn how to release judgment for getting sick. She blamed herself for getting sick. And she really had to learn how to release judgment of herself and find grace in that. But I agree with Sydney. I don't want to be here the one giving advice. I just want you to know that I feel you. I feel your words. And I see you. I see you in how you're trying to show up. And so if I can be of any assistance, I drop my information in the chat, and you need just ideas on how to take time for you. I have something called Hiking for Hope, and we just go out in nature and we reconnect to our roots. Go out in nature. You know, when we come to Virginia, come hike with us. Walk by yourself. Walk with a friend. But I'm just wishing you time for you, because you're important and you matter also. Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, I also want to just thank you all for showing up today. Again, this can be a very tough journey. So I appreciate you all. Of course, if you are watching this not live, if you're watching this recorded, all the information you should see down in the notes. Make sure to reach out to our experts. You will see their information. We will be doing this. This was great. I wasn't sure how our first one would be, but I am just moved with how many of you were able to show up. And I know it's difficult because you are caregivers. So thank you for showing up, continuing the journey, and we will be seeing you soon. And I think with that said, I will say goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
You guys have a great week. Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day. Yes. Have a great weekend.
Thank you guys for everything. Happy Mother's Day.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.